program, South Africa's unemployment figures continuing to smash records for all the wrong reasons, a clear sign that government is failing to address the issue. Statistics South Africa yesterday revealing that the joblessness rate has jumped to 35.3% in the fourth quarter of last year, with youth and black women the worst affected. Let's get you some analysis on these figures now. Economist Maudi Lentsoane joins us to unpack the story. Maudi, thanks very much indeed for your time on the program so early on a Wednesday morning. I mean, it's shocking, these numbers, 35.3%. That's not the expanded definition. We'll get to that in a moment. But of these 35.3%, the youth, absolutely the worst affected.
No, most certainly, Michelle, the youth have been on the receiving end of these horrible numbers that we've seen over the past couple of years. It's not really shocking. I mean, I think these numbers have been long coming. They've been on an upwards trajectory for a very long time. But I agree with you. It's now becoming a crisis. It's certainly one that has to be attended quite urgently, or we are heading for a disaster. Well, I mean, currently, when you look at the numbers, almost 66% of the youth is being impacted here. So very negative number that we've seen yesterday. That expanded number almost now approaching 50%.
Yeah, I mean it's shocking, isn't it? That translating, and it's again, these are the official numbers, to about 8 million people who are without work. Job creation and job retention, Maudi, these are clearly the issues that we're struggling with in terms of this crisis.
Well, certainly. I mean, you look at how many jobs were created over the third quarter, and I think this is the period where you would have expected quite a large number of jobs to be created, because given the fact that I think we were just heading into the period where the economy was beginning to open up, and I think there was just a positive momentum around the globe. I mean, I haven't accounted for the third or the first quarter of this year where there has been a lot of negativity. So I can only imagine what the numbers for the first quarter of 2022 would look like if the fourth quarter of last year, where I think the environment was fairly stable, and we couldn't even create more jobs. So I think the numbers can only get worse, given what has transpired in the first quarter of this year. So certainly a very big crisis that one needs an urgent attention.
I mean, that's sickening what you're saying there, isn't it? Because in the fourth quarter of last year, we saw almost 278,000 people joining the unemployment bracket. So those are additional people in terms of our unemployment numbers. If you're saying the fourth quarter was relatively stable compared to the first quarter of 2022, I mean, what would be the projections here?
The projections are quite dire. So that fourth quarter, I guess, the other negative impact, let's not forget, Michelle, was the fact that, the July, that the events of last year in July certainly were still being felt in the fourth quarter. So it had a massive negative impact. I mean, business was disrupted quite severely. But, we were beginning to think that things were stabilizing a bit, and business was recovering from that July unrest. Now, we know what has happened now in the new year. We've got the war in Ukraine, so that has still not been accounted for. So we will only know what the impact of that is in the months to come. And I think the projections are already that it's going to be negative for job creations, those events that are taking place there. I'm also surprised that, I mean, in the same token, when all efforts should be, put in place to ensure that, business is accommodated or supported, you've got the Reserve Bank, which is on an, upwards trajectory in terms of interest rates. I was a little bit, I was taken aback by that, because I think in this period where things are not okay, clearly, and you've got inflation, which is still pretty much contained, even though you've got, the costs of, fuel and everything rising, but it's got nothing to do with the demand side of the equation. It's more the supply side of the equation that the prices are increasing. So increasing interest rates is not really going to do much. So I was very critical of the Reserve Bank there. I think they should have paused to support this ailing economy.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Maudi, it's difficult to sort of come to terms with these numbers announced by Stats SA yesterday in a context where President Cyril Ramaphosa has just opened the 4th investment conference for funneling investment into South Africa. We're hearing that there are pledges in the billions coming to our country. We're not sure exactly how much of that is actually materialized in terms of investment into South Africa. But all of these big moves that are happening to try and encourage growth of the economy, encourage infrastructure builds, encourage people and countries to invest into South Africa, it's not translating into the kinds of jobs numbers we need to see.
It's not, and I think, we talk about the pledges and what they mean for the South African economy. I mean, some of these pledges are not, projects that immediately have an impact on the economy, on job creations. These are projects, some of them that, they've been there for a long time. And I think the other big challenge, the elephant in the room, is the energy security. It's the fact that when you have an economy that simply cannot be supported by, the electricity generation from Eskom, that any investments or any expansion, any manufacturing plant that needs to be installed today needs electricity supply. The question is, does Eskom have enough to supply that expansion? And the answer is no. So you've got an economy that really is in a very difficult period where there's just simply no capacity to create those much needed jobs, or to create the environment for the economy to grow, and also as a result create those jobs. Because if you get those pledges to materialize today, and you have all those manufacturing plants that are in the pipeline, who's going to supply them with electricity?
Yeah, absolutely. Maudi Lentsoane, let me thank you for your time this morning. An economist there joining us as we continue to come to terms with the unemployment numbers announced by Statistics South Africa just yesterday.